pretty common for people to experience religious doubt. I'm sure we all probably know somebody who's gone through a period, or maybe right now is going through a period of having doubts about faith. Maybe it's their own faith, they're a Christian, but they have some doubts, or maybe they're not a Christian, they're not part of any faith system, but they've got doubts that are preventing them from ever joining a church, coming to faith. We ourselves probably have experienced doubt at some point. If we look at polls, when they do research on Christians, the majority of Christians will tell you that they either currently or have in the past experienced some type of doubt, some period of doubt, or maybe they're even still continuing to doubt some aspect of their faith. We all want something certain, and it gets difficult because, I think that's one of the big things about faith is at some point our knowledge can only take us so far, and at some point we've got to make a decision. Hey, are we going to put our trust in Jesus? And that's not a sure thing, or at least in our minds often it is not, and it's easy to have some level of doubt, whether this is big or small, whether these are really serious doubts that might make us walk away, or just smaller doubts that just make us question why are things like that. That's the thing about doubt too, is it comes from different places. Different people will doubt for different reasons. I might experience something in my own life and wonder, why did God allow that to happen? And that might lead me down a road of having some type of doubt. Or I might just have some intellectual concerns, like everything about Christianity sounds fine, but it's just, does it really hold up to the reality I see in science, the one that I already know about through some type of other empirical data? But regardless of what's causing us to doubt, the question, I think, as Christians is, what are we supposed to do when someone doubts? Well, there has actually been some studies done on this area. I'm far from the first person to wonder, what am I supposed to do when my friends, my family, when people at my church doubt their faith? And we've seen in the past, or even in the present, a variety of responses to doubt. Maybe you've experienced this, or maybe you've even felt this like personal pressure. There's some people who, when they experience doubt, will tend to kind of bottle it up, keep it to themselves. They don't really want to tell people, or they kind of suppress it. Maybe they don't even want to give it any mind. I had a fleeting moment of a thought that about some doubt I had. Now I don't even want to think about it anymore. And even if I vocalize it, well, sometimes people's reaction is the other people who are not doubting, when they encounter someone who's experiencing doubts, they almost have the same reactions, like maybe we don't necessarily know what to say or do, and so we don't necessarily want to approach this topic of doubt. And I think there's even a fear amongst some people that, well, if we talk about our doubts and about hard parts of the Bible, if there's parts of the Bible that we have a hard time believing, and we talk a lot about these parts, we're just kind of like going to exacerbate things, make things worse. Maybe we're just going to increase doubts. The more we talk about our doubts, the more doubts we're going to have, and now we're just in this death spiral that's only going to lead us away from our faith. Well, I want to tell you that there is a particular study, and what they did was they followed people over time. They wanted to see the people who had a good social support system within the church, people who had friends who were Christians, family who were Christians, who went to regular church meetings, or they had a Bible study that they were part of. How did those people do? And how did people who didn't have those structures, people who they didn't have a lot of Christians around them in their life, people who maybe they didn't go to church regularly, or they didn't have a close-knit Bible study that they felt like they could lean on for help, how did they fare with their faith? That was the original question of this study. How did these people go through their life, and what was their experience of doubt? But there's a couple really interesting takeaways that I got from reading this study. As you might suspect, the people who had little to no social support structure, they didn't have a lot of Christians backing them up. Well, they tended to experience more religious doubt than the people who had a good social support structure. But it didn't turn out to be that when you you might almost think, hey, if I spend all my time with Christians, then maybe I just in general, everyone around me thinks one thing, so I'm just gonna, it's like group think. I'm just gonna think what everyone else thinks. So, of course, if I'm always hanging out with Christians all the time, I'm never gonna have doubts. And if I always hang out with people who aren't Christians, well, same thing. I'm gonna tend to drift towards what the majority think. And I'm sure that plays, some part in this. But what they actually found was that people who were in both groups still experienced doubt. People who were part of their Bible study, were devout Christians, and were surrounded by Christians in their lives, they still experienced periods of doubt. They still had serious questions about their faith. And the people who didn't have Christians in their life and who didn't have that support structure, they did too. But it's interesting the responses to the doubt that each person had, each group. The people who were not surrounded by Christians, the people who didn't have someone to lean on, to turn to, they were more likely to suppress their doubts, to not talk about them, not think about them. It's like, no, I'm just gonna send, doubts just go away. I don't want to even think about this. But the Christians who had the support system, who had a close friend, the best friend that's a Christian, or had a Bible study of people who they really felt like they could be open and honest with, well, they experienced doubt, but when they did, they tended to talk about it with the others. And this sent these two groups of people down very different paths. See, the people who didn't deal with their doubt just kind of wanted to ignore it, wanted to bottle it up. Nope, it's fine. It'll pass. It'll go away. Well, they tended to experience more doubt over time. Their doubts just multiplied as they tried to ignore it. And as a result, their faith suffered more and more. But the people who had that good social support structure, they tended to dive right into their doubts. They wanted to talk about their doubts with these other Christians in their life. Well, two big things, these people are reporting two big things happened to them. They say that, well, number one, their faith actually got strengthened. The more they thought and talked about their doubts, the more they worked through the doubt that they were having, the stronger their faith got. And over time, they experienced less doubt overall. But not because they never doubted. It's not that one group just tended to doubt more than the other. It's that they focused on their doubts. They didn't let it be like this little cancer that was in them that they didn't treat, and then over time it just grew and grew and grew. So all of us who are interested in apologetics, most of my videos, I'm thinking about apologetics. What's the reason I should believe in Christianity? Well, I think we also need to think about not just our apologetic argument, but what's the best environment to create when we're talking about apologetics, when we're talking about truth, when we're talking about Christianity. I think we need to be thinking about having that same type of support structure that these people experience, that helped them feel like, okay, I'm comfortable now. I know I got friends and family around me. We can all talk about this question together, this really hard thing about Christianity. Why does God allow evil to exist? I can talk about this in a safe place with other believers. Those people flourished. So we want to, as Christians, think about creating, what can we do to create more environments like that? And what are we doing in our churches? If we're in a church, are we in a church that if somebody came in and told everyone in the congregation, I'm seriously struggling with my faith right now, I'm not sure if this is true. I got some serious questions that I need to get answered. Why is God allowing suffering? Or what's the deal with scientific evidence that we get about creation? Or whatever the issue is, whatever the issues they're struggling with. What do you think the average parishioner would do? Would the people in the pews, would they like, ooh, okay, well, we're going to stay away from that person? Or are they going to be welcoming? Yeah, absolutely. Come on in. Be part of the group. Let's all talk about this together. Let's all figure out the answer. And honestly, if we're even waiting, I want to get to the point where, as a Christian, you can walk into church or Bible study or whatever, and you can voice your doubts and be accepted and supported instead of rejected or silenced. Like, hey, we're just going to ignore that. We're just going to move on. But honestly, it takes a lot of courage for somebody to even tell a group of people that they're doubting their faith. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people who are doubting their faith in our churches now do so silently. They're not necessarily telling anyone. But as a church community, we could still help to address some of these doubts. You know, if we're leading a Bible study or we're having a Christian conversation, just we're hanging out with some Christian friends over coffee. It's not even supposed to be a teaching moment. We can still talk about issues that cause people doubt. Even if we don't know, hey, what's the specific doubt someone's dealing with? If we're regularly addressing the hard questions about Christianity, I think we're going to do two things. One, we're going to touch on questions that people are doubting about, but maybe aren't vocalizing. You know, all of a sudden we're teaching about the existence of evil. And we're talking about something that someone really is struggling with in our congregation, even though we don't know it. Or we really will start to, even if we never touch on the thing that's causing someone to really doubt, I think overall we'll create a sense of community where, hey, doubts can be discussed, big questions, hard questions can be discussed and answered. There's really an answer. You know, if Christianity is true, then no matter what the question is, no matter what the doubt is, Christianity would have the answer, right? That's not to say we're going to understand every little thing about God and what is his purpose. And sure, there's always going to be something more to know. But all these big questions that might turn us away from Christianity, if Christianity is true, I mean, it really ought to be able to answer these things. So we should feel, as Christians, confident talking about these matters. You know, if we hold the truth, then we don't need to be afraid to talk about doubts, because talking about doubts should only lead to one conclusion: the truth. And if that's Christianity, that's what we got. That's what we want to share. So I just want us to think about that as we're going out into our relationships with people, whether it's just our friend or whether we're a pastor teaching a church, whatever our level of influence is. I think we need to have a posture that we're accepting of people who doubt. That doesn't mean you're not a Christian or you don't care about God, but you really have a serious hurdle. We're worried. What if this means Christianity is not true? And I hope that we can create a community where we all feel comfortable talking about this openly so we can find the answer.